Hello, friends. Welcome back to From the Dark Side. I'm your host, Sherry. Today we're talking about 55-year-old Monica Schmeyer, who bravely crawled to call 911 to report she had been attacked in her home. Unfortunately, she doesn't get a single word out. Police arrive and find her deceased. Who killed this nice woman? Police have a person of interest almost right away, but he has a solid alibi. This case was featured on Forensic Files 2 a couple years ago. I was so glad Forensic Files had a reboot. I used to watch the originals all the time, way back in the day. This is episode 164, The Case of Monica Schmeyer. Let's go back to 2010 for this case. We had the Haiti earthquake, which caused mass casualties, and the Chile earthquake. Russia had a heat wave that killed 56,000 people. The Apple iPad was released, so was Toy Story 3. The boy band One Direction was formed. Instagram was launched. And in weird news from 2010, a Massachusetts couple was surprised when their pet cat named Sal Esposito was summoned for jury duty. Despite writing a letter explaining that Sal was a cat, the court insisted he still had to appear. The cat didn't serve on a jury in the end, but gave a lot of folks some laughs. Monica Schmeyer is 55 years old. She grew up in New Jersey. She was one of 5 siblings. Her brother described Monica as a very religious and very private person who didn't bother a soul. She stayed to herself except when she ventured out to church. She is currently divorced and single. She has 2 adult daughters named Veronica and Elsa. She has a corgi dog that was the love of her life. She attends 2 local churches. She did volunteer work in the church, such as driving communion to church members who were unable to leave their home due to age, disability, or sickness. Monica went to medical school in the 70s where she met her husband. Monica decided instead of working in the medical field, she was going to quit and be a stay-at-home mom to her 2 daughters. Her husband was a successful eye doctor, so money wasn't an issue. They moved to York County, Pennsylvania in 1985, but divorced in 2008, just 2 years before our story. One of Monica's adult daughters lives with her, but she's currently out of the country vacationing in Japan. Monica's house is in rural York County, Pennsylvania. It's a beautiful stone home. York County is known for being close to the Maryland border. It's known for its rich history, rolling hills, scenic farmland, and growing suburban communities. The Susquehanna River runs along the eastern border. Towns like Red Lion and Shrewsbury show the area's agricultural roots. Every year there is the York County Fair, which dates all the way back to the 1700s and is one of the oldest in the country. York County offers a slower pace of life in rural areas while also catering to younger families and professionals in more suburban communities. Monica's daughter, Veronica, told the York County Dispatch News that her mom was very simple. She loved the peace and quiet. She could spend the whole night on her porch with her dog just looking out at the woods. That sounds wonderful, but if you've ever been in the quiet of the woods and heard a twig snap, it suddenly doesn't seem so peaceful. This area doesn't see a lot of crime. There's the occasional drunk driver or property theft. That's about it. Not much goes on here. On March 31st, 2010, an emergency dispatcher in York County received a call from a landline phone. When she answered, there was no one on the other end. It was just silence. The operator kept saying hello, but wasn't getting a response. When she tried to call back, the phone was emitting a busy signal. For you young people who aren't familiar with landlines, a busy signal is when the phone is still operating and the other person can't get through. About 90% of the time when that happens, it winds up being a toddler playing with their parents' phone or someone dialed by accident like I did when I was 13, but they have to send somebody out anyway. They see this call came from a house on Trone Road. They drive out to Monica's home. Her home sits at the top of a hill, and to get there took some time, especially because Monica had this long, twisting driveway up a steep hill. They arrive and don't get an answer when they knock, so they make their way into the home, which is unlocked. Her daughter says that her mom sometimes left the big door open and just used the screen door so she could get a breeze into the house. There they find the body of 55-year-old Monica Schmeyer laying in the living room floor. Her landline phone was hanging off the hook from where she tried to call 911. The base of the phone was on a bookshelf. They see bloody fingerprints on the numbers 9 and 1. At first glance, it appears she died from a gunshot wound to the head, but they won't know for sure until they look around and the medical examiner arrives. They are thinking at first this might be a suicide situation, but there's no gun laying next to her or anywhere else in the house. The evidence later showed that she was killed with a .32 caliber gun, but there's no gun around. There's no overturned furniture or any evidence that this was a robbery, but the condition of Monica's body showed a fight had taken place before she was shot. They see a single shell casing on the ground next to her, so it's collected and placed into an evidence bag by the York County forensic team. What can Monica tell us? According to forensic files, Monica's face was bloody and bruised, so she had to have been attacked before she was shot. There was also a trail of blood leading to her body from where she crawled on the floor to get to the phone. She was moving. This poor woman didn't die instantly. She felt every bit of the pain from being beaten in the head before she was shot. But what she did do as a last act of heroism is she managed to call 911. Even though she couldn't speak, she called and they came. Her home is so remote, who knows how long it would have been before she was found. Her daughter was away on vacation. It's believed she hadn't been shot when she called 911, but it was in the moments afterwards. Dr. Samuel Land performed Monica's autopsy at the Lehigh Valley Hospital, and his conclusion is that she died from a single gunshot wound above her left ear. Dr. Land found a bullet and a fragment inside of Monica's skull. The doctor also noted bruising and cuts to her eyebrow, face, and chin. He determined that these injuries were not consistent with a single post-death fall to the floor, but instead resulted from repeated strikes to the head, possibly with a firearm. Since a struggle had taken place, the medical examiner took scrapings from under her fingernails in case they could get a DNA match later. This 911 call was a huge help to police and the medical examiner because this can narrow down her time of death. The call was made at 2:52 p.m., so she died at approximately 2:52 p.m. All of Monica's belongings are accounted for. Her purse is there, stereo, jewelry, TVs. One thing that stands out to police is on the living room floor. There's a bunch of white envelopes scattered around. Stuffed inside them were cash. Now, everybody's got their thing that may seem odd to others, but that's just how they do it. That's their thing. For Monica, she didn't trust banks. She didn't have a bank account. All her transactions were handled in cash. She was strictly a cash person. No credit cards, no debit cards, no PayPal, just cash. So her ex-husband, John the eye doctor, well, they divorced because he had a tendency to be more interested in other women. But Monica, being the religious woman that she was, just dealt with it for quite a while. They were married for 21 years, and getting divorced goes against everything she believes in. Even after they divorced, Monica just played along like they were still married. She wouldn't date other people. In her mind, she was still John's wife and he was her husband. Now, John doesn't want to have this kind of relationship dynamic. He just sees Monica as his ex-wife. He was frustrated that she wouldn't let go. John has moved on and has a new girlfriend and a whole new life. He paid Monica alimony every month and was beginning to become pretty frustrated. Not because he has to pay her every month. He knew that was part of the deal when he filed for divorce, and money isn't really an issue for John. He was frustrated about how he had to pay her. Their arrangement was pretty unconventional. What he would do is he would put her money in a white envelope and bring it to her every month. She would tally up all of her bills, and she would give him money back for the total that her bills came to. Then John would write a check for each of her bills individually. The rest of the money in the white envelope was hers to keep. Yeah, I imagine that would get super annoying and feel like a lot of extra work. Most times, alimony checks are just mailed to the former spouse and that's the end of it. He's got all these extra steps. They've been divorced for 2 years, so he's been doing this for a while. Anyway, there's all these white envelopes with cash in Monica's living room scattered around, which are monthly cash payments from John. The police first want to talk to John. If Monica was dead, he would be free from these large alimony payments, and he also wouldn't have to do all this extra stuff for Monica and her bills. So he has a motive. Although these alimony payments were set to expire in 1 year, so he doesn't have to do this much longer. The interview was a little strange, and police initially thought he was hiding something because of his on and off crying that wasn't really crying. It seemed like he was pretending. Police know Monica's time of death was 2:52 p.m. John was out with a group of friends at this time. So he's got several people who can vouch he was with them and not at Monica's house. Plus, they're all at Hooters. The security cameras showed he was there for a couple hours, and it was during the time when Monica was killed. John is part of a group called the Orange Shorts Society. The Orange Shorts Society are a group of men who get together once a month at a restaurant, and they are basically a club. They are called the Orange Shorts Society because they meet at Hooters each time and the waitresses wear orange shorts. They get together once a month and discuss politics, financial stuff, and stuff going on in their lives. Most are men who are well off and just looking to hang and talk about life. John was at the Orange Shorts meetup during the time of Monica's murder, so his alibi was solid. The police interview Monica's neighbors. So to get to Monica's house, you go down a road that has a house about every half mile. Then you turn off that road to her driveway, which is this long, twisting uphill driveway. It's probably a quarter to a half mile long. So the nearest neighbor is pretty far away. This neighbor says he was outside and saw a man walking down Snyder Mill Road near Monica's property that afternoon. He looked to be late 30s, early 40s, white guy. 20-30 minutes later, this neighbor spots that same man coming back from Monica's area, and he was carrying a white envelope. York County sheriffs remember that Monica had all those white envelopes scattered around the living room. Another neighbor saw a man fitting this description walk over and get into a silver van that was parked nearby. This wasn't a family-style minivan, it was a work van. York County Crime Stoppers put up a cash reward for anyone who can help identify Monica's killer, and her family adds an additional $3,000 to the reward fund. So we've got a silver work van and a middle-aged white man carrying an envelope and leaving the area near Monica's property. The person who saw the van didn't get the license plate because they really didn't have a reason to. If you saw someone walking down the road and get in a van, the average person isn't going to think to jot down the license plate number. Us true crime fans are built different, though. We might actually do this. But this neighbor didn't get a license plate number, and that's okay because he already provided a huge piece of info. A silver work van is what police are looking for. They ran the database and found there was about 50 silver vans in the area. They don't feel this is a random attack because of how remote Monica's house is, but they feel the killer might have known Monica to a degree, even a very small one. So they check into her personal life, and just as her daughter said, Monica lived a very simple, low risk lifestyle. Monica doesn't date, so she doesn't have a man in her life, and her ex was with the Orange Short Society. She just took things easy. She was a private person. She had her dog and cat. Side note, these pets were taken to the York County SPCA after her murder, where they stayed until family picked them up. Sometimes people will ask me, what happened to the dog? And then I got to go find out. So I'll try to remember to give an update on pets in these kind of cases. According to Forensic Files 2, once the investigation started ramping up, the police began canvassing the entire area, basically going door to door and checking in with people and businesses all over town. They were specifically on the lookout for a silver work van that this neighbor had seen a man getting into. To follow up on that lead, they started pulling security footage from any place that might have a camera: gas stations, stores, office buildings, you name it. One of the more interesting pieces of footage came from a bank that wasn't too far from Monica's house. The camera there wasn't pointed at the road. It was really just set up to monitor people going in and out of the bank. But in the background, you can clearly see a silver van driving by. It's not super detailed, though, unfortunately. You can't make out who's driving, and there's no way to get a license plate number from it because of the angle and focus. But what's key is the timing. The van drives by about 15 minutes before Monica was killed, and it's headed in the direction of her house. It's not close enough to ID the suspect, but it definitely has the investigators one step closer. The camera catches it again, going in the opposite direction after Monica was murdered. The detective in this case said you don't just find this house on a whim. You had to know it was back there. This killer definitely knew where they were going. So the detective is kind of stumped at this point since he can't find any connection to Monica, so he goes back to the drawing board again. He looks at the list of names of the Orange Short Society. He had interviewed everyone that was with John that afternoon. One he comes across, her name is Sarah. Her fiance was in the Orange Short Society, but she wasn't. She happened to be at the meetup that day with the rest of the guys. Her fiance couldn't make it, so she went on his behalf. Her fiance's name was Tim Jacoby. He was the only member not present that day. Tim is 37 years old. He has a good job, a stable life, and seems to be an unlikely candidate. The detective's like, what the hell, it won't hurt just to look into him a little bit. So he pulls up his driver's license picture. He looks similar to the man the witness described. Late 30s, early 40s, same build, same height. To me, it sounds like the average man in America, but this detective thinks maybe this guy could be our killer. He didn't attend the meetup that day because he was at work. Maybe he was working, but it's possible he was busy murdering someone also. He looks into his background and sees he may be doing good in life now, but Mr. Tim has an armed robbery conviction in his past. He robbed a jewelry store. When he ran out, he fumbled all the jewelry and ended up losing it. He pled no contest and didn't get any jail time. What really raises their eyebrows is that Tim owns a .32 caliber gun, kind of like the one Monica was murdered with. They know she was killed with a .32 because they found the shell casing laying next to her body and the bullet was found during the autopsy. Coincidentally, Tim has a silver work van that belonged to his employer, which they verified he was using it on March 31st, 2010, the day Monica was killed. Same make and model they were looking for. They checked with the employer and the company vans had a sign-out notebook. And can you guess which page had been ripped out? March 31st, 2010. After some research, they learned Tim and Monica never met one another. They may have known of one another, but they had zero connection except her ex-husband was in a club with him. Now this new picture is coming to mind. John the eye doctor may not have killed Monica, but is it possible he got a friend from the Orange Short Society to do it instead? Did he hire Tim as a hitman? John's bank records are checked and they found no large withdrawals to see if he would have pulled out cash for the job, just his monthly alimony withdrawals, which go in a white envelope for Monica. They check various accounts and they see he hadn't transferred any money from his account to Tim's. They don't believe this was a murder for hire, but it was definitely looked into. According to the lead detective in this case, a search warrant was issued for Tim Jacoby's home. I had to double check my facts in this story because I didn't realize that this was 15 months after Monica's murder. When I heard about this story a few years ago, I felt like they had a search warrant within weeks, but 15 months have already passed since Monica's death. When police got there with the search warrant, his girlfriend was like, "What's going on?" They told her why they were there, and she began vomiting and hyperventilating, which is a completely valid reaction. She was really bothered by the thought that her fiancé could have had something to do with Monica's murder. Police didn't find the .32 caliber gun, but they found part of it, just the barrel, which is all they really need. They just have to fire a bullet, and if the marks match up on the next shell casing to the one that was found next to Monica, it's a wrap. However, this won't be easy, because after dismantling the gun, someone had taken a wire sponge or brush to the inside of the barrel. Someone's been watching forensic crime shows because they knew enough to try and scrub out the rifling marks. Rifling marks are like the gun's fingerprints. Without those grooves, it's nearly impossible to match the bullet to the gun. It's an effective way to erase a crucial piece of evidence. This killer knows that, and this wasn't just from him cleaning the gun. Someone wanted to alter the marks. There's still a lot of circumstantial evidence which may convince a jury, but detectives want a little bit more. They check out the van Tim was driving that day. It was a match to the one spotted near Snyder Mill Road. And because he's a terrible person, he even submitted an expense report to his employer for the van that day. I assume he got gas in it and wanted to be reimbursed. Still could be coincidental. They need something more solid. They have another way to maybe get a bullet match. Tim was known to go to his parents a lot and practice shooting. They get a search warrant for their property. They found the box that the gun came in, plus a box for the ammunition. All they have to do is look around at the targets. Sure enough, there's 4 spent casings laying there on the ground from before he filed down the markings. The shell casings were from a .32 caliber. So we've got 5 bullet casings in total, 4 from the ground on Tim's parents' property and 1 removed from Monica during the autopsy. They all have the same markings on them and were fired from the same gun. It was also the same brand, which was Speer. The DNA from the scrapings under Monica's nails were tested, and it was concluded that the DNA belonged to a male somewhere in Tim Jacoby's lineage, so it was Tim or one of his male relatives. Tim was placed under arrest and charged with first-degree murder. This case is a good example of something we all should remember. Be careful who you vent to. Basically, what was happening is John would meet up with the Orange Short Society at Hooters. They'd talk all about their week, things going on in their life. John began complaining about he and Monica's alimony payment arrangement. He consistently complained to the guys about how his ex-wife is still pretending like she's married. She doesn't have a bank account, so he's got to pay her $1,700 a month in cash. Well, one of these guys was taking mental notes. Tim Jacoby listened to John complain about his ex-wife. He took it all in. He listened to John say his oldest daughter would be taking a trip to Japan in March of 2010. This daughter lived with Monica, so he knew she would be home alone. I feel so bad for this daughter who was in a completely different country, likely having the time of her life, and then getting a call that her mother had been murdered. Her other daughter lives in Florida, and I know that that was hard for her too. Tim found Monica's address and paid her a deadly visit to find all this cash she kept in her home. This lady was killed over just a few $1,000s. According to Penn Live, John later told a detective that he was responsible for this. What he meant by this was that if it wouldn't have been for him, Tim would have never known about Monica keeping cash in her home. He also said that Monica hated when he would go to Hooters. Even though she is his ex-wife, she still despised him going. John says it's all a painful irony. Tim would go to trial in 2014 at York County Court. He was described as emotionless through the whole trial. A jury is going to find him guilty of first-degree murder, robbery, burglary, and tampering with evidence since he filed down the barrel markings. He was ultimately sentenced to the death penalty. Tim appealed his conviction. Anytime you get the death penalty, the Supreme Court will automatically review your case. I'm not sure if that's all states, but in Pennsylvania it is. The jury that convicted Tim and the Supreme Court found that DNA evidence under Monica's fingernails pointed to a male in Tim's family line, and the court said that was solid enough. They found the ballistics evidence tied his Kel-Tec 32 to the scene. They found the timeline and witness details put him and his van close to Monica's house. While reviewing the appeal, Pennsylvania's Supreme Court agreed that even if some search procedures were flawed by police, the core evidence was so strong that the outcome wouldn't change. So that's why the guilty verdict and death sentence stood firm. They upheld both the conviction and the death sentence and rejected his claims about improper evidence and legal errors. According to the York Daily Record, Pennsylvania Corrections Secretary John Wetzel signed a notice of execution for Tim in February 2019. His death date was set for March 8, 2019, but he was granted a stay of execution. There was a long suspension of all death sentences in the U.S., but in February 2025, President Trump lifted it, so death sentences are reinstated again. But 3 states still have their own moratorium: California, Oregon, and Pennsylvania. So Tim Jacoby will not be executed anytime soon. I said it earlier and I'll say it again. Be careful who you vent to. Look at our episode 154, the case of Michael Carruth and Jimmy Brooks. They knew which families in their community had cash stacked inside because people talked about it. If you have cash in your home, don't tell people. If you know someone is hoarding cash, keep it to yourself. Having a safe to keep it in isn't enough because someone will just hold you at gunpoint and make you open the safe. In both cases, Monica's and episode 154, they were murdered even though they freely would have given them the money they had just to stay alive. Monica is remembered as a very kind, quiet, and devout Catholic. She went to medical school but decided that staying home to take care of her children would be a better option instead. She is missed by her daughters, her church, and her friends. Her obituary states, "A quiet exterior concealed a passionate heart that was unafraid to do what was necessary and right in her life. In times of need, she was absolutely trustworthy and dependable, and her admirable inner strength was firmly rooted in her faith in God." Her daughter said she would drop everything to make sure others were okay. Monica is buried at the St. Joseph's Catholic Cemetery in York County, Pennsylvania. Rest in peace to Monica Schmeyer. That's it for this week, and I'll see you all again soon. Take care, and much love to you all.